Hello, I'm Grin, and welcome back to another book club, as we take a look at another Halo novel, this time the second novel, The Flood. Now, I wasn't a huge fan of this novel, for several reasons that I'll get into. It's definitely not what I enjoyed as much as The Fall of Reach, and while I don't think it's a bad novel, it's certainly not on my recommended list, which is a real shame, or at least was when I was reading for the first time, because I immediately finished The Fall of Reach, loved it, picked up the next Halo novel, and about 3 pages in, I realised that I just wasn't enjoying it quite as much. And I suppose that brings us to the first problem with the novel, which is the writing style. I just don't find I enjoy William Diet's writing style as much as I enjoyed Eric Nyland's. I don't really remember why. As I said, it's been quite a few years since I read either of the novels, and it's difficult to compare writing styles on recently read novels when you're doing on the fly, let alone ones that you read a decade ago. So I'll just leave it at that I enjoyed Eric Nyland's writing style more and move on to the next point, because writing styles are definitely not the major issue in this novel. What is the major issue with the novel is ironically the inverse of pretty much every adaptation complaint anyone's ever made. You see, whenever anyone makes a movie based on a novel, or a novel based on a movie, or anything based on a comic book, immediately everyone familiar with the original source material cries out when anything minor has been missed. The Flood, however, has the complete opposite issue. You see, this novel is based on Halo 1, and I've played Halo 1 so very many times, and I had played it so very many times when reading this novel, and unfortunately, every single section following Master Chief follows the campaign in immaculate detail, describing every single hallway and every single enemy you encounter, which means if you're extremely familiar with the game, you're going to be faced with chapter after chapter explaining in exhaustive detail things that you're already extremely familiar with. I found that it got to the point that any chapter in The Flood that was following Master Chief felt like it was almost a chore, and I was just trying to get through it so I could get back to the B story following the other, far more interesting characters. Now, the B story of The Flood is absolutely fascinating. You follow a ragtag group of Marines that have survived the crash of the Pillar of Autumn as they try to set up their base and survive on this completely alien ring. And speaking of aliens, you also follow a Gold Elite who's been tasked with healing the Master Chief, whose story is also far more interesting than that of the Chiefs in this novel. As such, rather weirdly, I think this novel really suffers from the fact that the biggest fans of the novel are going to be the ones most bored with it. If you've never played Halo 1, I think you'll probably enjoy it far more than if you've played it a lot because you love it, because if you do love it and you have played it a lot, you're going to be really bored with quite a lot of the rehashing of this story. I think it could have been a far more interesting story if they had focused entirely on the secondary characters, who only occasionally cross over with the Master Chief, and just leave it as assumed knowledge that if you're reading a Halo novel, you've probably played the first game in the franchise. And so I suppose as far as who I recommend this novel to, if you've not played the Halo games and you've read The Fall of Reach and want to know what happens next, this is the next installment, although fair warning, it is a completely different writing style and the pacing's entirely different, and I guess if you've played Halo a lot and you want to know what happens to the Master Chief between leaving a level during the daytime and arriving at the next one at nighttime or whatever, this will fill in the gaps, and it has a very interesting B story, but overall, I think you're going to find a lot of it unfortunately drags rather heavily. It does, in its defense, answer some of the mild plot holes in the Halo franchise. For instance, in Halo 1 how you see Johnson die on camera, and yet in Halo 2 you find him alive and well. So as far as that goes, it does a very good job, although as I said, it's not the B story that's the issue, it's the sections following the Master Chief I don't enjoy. It's definitely, unfortunately, not my favourite Halo novel, and I find that whenever I try to reread it, as soon as it gets to a part that's just recapping a level in extreme detail, I end up just putting the book down and playing Halo itself. And so, with all of that said and done, as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, I have been and still am Grim Grindle.